And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we are talking about the possible Terry McLaurin extension. And so we're going to be talking about what Adam Peters had to say about extending Terry McLaurin. And we're also going to be talking about what that would mean for the Washington Commanders. And then we're going to be looking at some NFL draft prospects. We're going to be looking at some wide receivers that I think can really come in and have the same type of impact long-term like we are seeing with Terry McLaurin. And so before we go ahead and jump into the content for today, I first wanted to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, just like Jayden Daniels is going to hit Terry McLaurin for a lot of touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe, I'm going to give you nothing but daily Washington Commanders content. And so make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe, join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into today's content. And so if you have not heard the Commanders, they are looking to get a long-term extension worked out here with Terry McLaurin. This particular article is on Commanders Wire, and this is really everywhere. But I like this one because there is a snippet with Adam Peters talking to, I believe, the host there, Kay Adams, on the Up and Adams show, and just talking about how he wants Terry McLaurin to be with the Commanders. In fact, he said, we want to make Terry a Commander for a long time. And so some of the things that Adam Peters was talking about Terry McLaurin and extending him is just, look, he said that he's a great commander. He talked about the fact that, yes, he's been great as a leader, not just as a player, but he was very impressed, just paraphrasing this, just how he was able to grow so much really throughout the season, just became even more polished as a player. And so it just looks like that, look, they are trying to go ahead and get Terry McLaurin taken care of. He says that, look, right now, obviously the talks that we're having, those are going to stay in-house, but he feels that it's been really positive. And so this is a good sign. Look, Terry McLaurin, man, he has been a huge impact for the Washington Commanders. He had 82 catches for over 1,000 yards, his fifth consecutive 1,000-yard season last season. And man, when you look at just what he's been able to do, there's only been one season where he hasn't gone over 1,000, and it was just barely. It was 919 yards as a rookie. And so that just lets you know just how good Terry McLaurin has been. And we know that he's gone through multiple quarterbacks, and I think he's certainly got a quarterback that he'll be with for much longer here with Jayden Daniels. And so, look, you got to get Terry McLaurin taken care of. I mean, at this point in time, he's set to make $15.5 million. I think that he's certainly worth, a lot more than that, especially to the Washington Commanders. And so, look, I think that you take care of Terry McLaurin, you get this out the way. This guy is certainly a commander. I've loved the way that he carries himself on and off the field. And you do love just his professionalism. And I think that that is going to lead to the next point when we look at some of these NFL draft prospects. I think that when you look at Terry McLaurin and just the way that he comes to work every day, you wish that you could get this type of just output from all the rookies that you bring onto your football team. And it's almost incredible to me that, look, in 2019, he was a third-round draft pick. I mean, he was very good at Ohio State University. And so, he does not play like a third-round pick. This is why, look, when it comes down to the NFL draft, it has got to be more than round one. It's got to be maybe more than just day one and day two. You can really find some great players. You just got to hang in there and make sure that you're scouting very well. And so that leads us to the next point here with the Washington Commanders, because I do think that, look, you're bringing back Terry McLaurin as you extend him, and I love what they did with Deebo Samuel, but I still think that the Washington Commanders need to go out and they need to add some more juice. And I think that that is probably going to happen, I think, through the draft more so, than what you would see in free agency. And so it made me think, okay, who is going to be the player that would maybe make the same type of impact as Terry McLaurin, has the same maybe type of work ethic, the same type of skill sets coming out. And so initially, when I looked at the first prospect, these are a couple prospects we've talked about. We're going to talk about a new one as well. But I think the first one here that really comes to mind for me is going to be, I think, Nick Nash. And so, with him, I think he's a player to me that I'm very intrigued with just his ability to just understand what the defense is doing. And we talked about this before with the fact that he played quarterback. And this reminds me of a former player that used to play for the Washington franchise, and Jordan Reed. I believe he was a quarterback before he became a very good tight end for us. But I love the fact that, look, he's got the big body. Great change in direction as far as just, being able to kind of change pace and burst out of routes and things like that. And I think he's a guy that would be certainly a technician. And I think that's one of the things that they talk about with him, because he's coming from a quarterback, background. But I think it's something that he can definitely get done, because look, he got the Triple Crown in college, and talking about the receptions of 104 yards, over 1,000 yards, and 16 touchdowns. I mean, this guy is literally like 7-Eleven, man. He is always open. And so, look, I like him a lot. Had 6 receptions, 89 yards in his first ever game as a wide receiver. And he just reminds me of a player maybe that could be like Terry McLaurin. And he's definitely a player that maybe he's not going to go in the first couple rounds, but I think the Washington Commanders, man, would really have something special with him. And then next up, look, here's another player that I think a lot of us, think maybe the Washington Commanders certainly would take a chance with, and that's going to be Jayden Higgins. And so quickly with Jayden Higgins, I talked about him before. He's an absolute red zone threat. Great hands. So you love that about him. In fact, just 2 drops in 129 targets in his last season. And so that is definitely a quality that we get with Terry McLaurin. He is certainly a sure-handed wide receiver. So that's why I'm saying, look, he could be a player that could be an impact for us that way. Fights after the catch. That reminds me a lot of Terry McLaurin. Look, just going back to the play here in last year's NFC Championship game, it seemed like the Eagles had him. He gets out of that, and then he's off to the races. And that is the type of player, and kind of the same similarities that I get from Jayden Higgins. Maybe he could be that type of player. And then you just love just what he was able to do, I think, as far as the way that he's able to get through the route trees and things like that. At least I like it. I mean, I think that that's something he needs to work on, but I think that's another thing that really makes Terry McLaurin elite, is the ability to really go through anything in the route tree. And I think that all these players that we're talking about can do so. And so that leads me really down to the new prospect that we have not talked about on this channel here. And that is Tetairoa McMillan. And so they call him T-Mac. And so look, with T-Mac, I like him a lot. I think that this is a player that certainly he could do some damage at the next level. And I just love the fact with him, look, at 6'4", and he's 212 pounds. This is a guy that got progressively better each year. He went from 702 yards, and then he also had 8 touchdowns, which I was reading here in his NFL draft prospect. I believe that actually led the nation for players that really made their debut that season or whatnot. And so that just lets you know how elite he was from day one on the field. And then after that, look, the guy did not disappoint. I mean, his next year he had over 90 receptions. Yeah, 90 receptions, 1,402 yards, 15.6 was the average, 10 touchdowns. Then this last season, he didn't have as many receptions, only 84 receptions, but he still had 1,319 yards and a 15.7 average. And so just slightly up with the average. And he also had 8 touchdowns. And so when you look at his game tape and just some of the things that he can do, look, I love the fact that, number one, he is terrific when it comes down to contested footballs. I think that that's something that I also trust Terry McLaurin to do, is to take care of business when it comes down to a contested catch. So that's number one. And then number two with him, I think that he's a guy that tracks the football at a high point. I think that, look, if you throw it at the eye level, there were several times on tape he reaches out and he plucks the ball out of the air. And so I think that you love that with his ability to really attack the football at the highest point and before it gets onto his body. And so that really leads into the catch radius. I love his catch radius. I feel like that, look, if Jayden Daniels is throwing it to him, I think that, man, he can throw it just anywhere near him and he's going to get the catch. And so next up, to me, I thought he was a little bit more of a home run hitter. And so just going back to what I was talking about with Terry McLaurin and getting loose into the open field, I think that that's what makes Terry McLaurin pretty special, is because he has a lot more speed than I think a lot of people really give him credit for. I think he's underrated there in the open field. And I do think that with T-Mac here, this is a guy that certainly can get out into the open field. And I think he could be a home run hitter, much like Terry McLaurin. And then next, Look, here's another thing that I really, really like about this guy is just I love his ability to make the adjustments. Like there were several times where the ball is coming, and then it just seems like he has terrific body control. And I think that that's another thing that I see as far as a similarity to a Terry McLaurin is just the ability to make those type of adjustments. And so you love that. And here's an added bonus, and here's why I would say the Washington Commanders would take him if he's available. And I think he's probably a player that, look, man, he might be very NFL ready right now. But when asked, I think it was on CBS Sports, it was an interview, and they were asking, who would you like to catch footballs from? And he picked Jayden Daniels as his quarterback, that he would like to have some footballs. Well, he'd love to have him throw some footballs to him. And he was talking about, look, over Patrick Mahomes, over Lamar Jackson, over Joe Burrow, he went with our Washington's Jayden Daniels. And so, look, that is definitely going to win some extra points with me. I think that he certainly could be a guy that, look, he could maybe be a day one starter for you in the NFL. And I think, man, that would really make the wide receivers for the Washington Commanders extremely dangerous. He does have a little bit of a DK Metcalf feel. And so the question is, when will he be available? Like I said, I think he's very polished, much like Emeka Ibuka that we talked about from Ohio State. I think that these guys go about their business. They're very professional. And I think that these are guys that can be really day one starters for you. So anyway, let me know in the comments here, what do you think about McMillan and the Washington Commanders picking him up? What do you feel about a player like Nick Nash? Do you think that, yes, maybe he could be a player that the Washington Commanders would go out and get? Or do you feel like, you know what, it's going to be Jayden Higgins, or you feel like it's going to be Mbuka over from Ohio State University, which I think that would make a lot of sense as well. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you're thinking. And as we always say, go Commanders. I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.